It's the depths of winter, 1941. Pablo Picasso is living and working on the top floor of an old house in Left Bank, Paris. The Third Reich owns Europe.
Every so often, Picasso gets visits from the Gestapo. They mutter about degenerate art and drop dark hints he's hiding Jewish friends. Then they trash the studio a bit. One day, there's a visit that passes into the Picasso legend.
The unwelcome visitor snoops around a bit. Then, he notices there are postcards lying around of Picasso's most famous work. His epic depiction of what happened when German bombs fell on a small Basque town in the Spanish Civil War. Guernica.
"Did you do this?" he says. "Oh no," says Picasso. "You did. Go on, take one. Souvenir." Great comeback. Good story. But what can art really do in the face of atrocity? Shouldn't art just stick to what it does best, the delivery of pleasure, and forget about being a paintbrush warrior? Or is it when the bombs are dropping that we find out what art is really for?
Paris in the 1920s. Pablo Picasso was the sovereign of modern painting. He was living in a fancy apartment near the Champs-Élysées with his Russian ballerina wife, Olga, and their little boy. He showed his paintings in a classy gallery. And all of art was his kingdom. Drunk on self-confidence and cleverness, he could take it wherever he fancied. One day, in January 1927, he noticed something he definitely fancied.
Blonde, vaguely Nordic, statuesque, 16. She's called Marie-Thérèse Walter, and Picasso sees her one afternoon outside Galeries Lafayette, a department store. He loses no time, goes up to her and says, "Mademoiselle, you have a most interesting face, and I should like to paint it. I am Picasso."
Marie-Thérèse would become his lover and a compulsive obsession in his art. In 1932, he poses Marie-Thérèse in a languid reverie. Gently masturbating, she's literally got sex on her mind. Pictures like this do what they show, stroking us into a playful trance. The colour and wit of the thing, a drowsy, sensual entertainment. It's the provocative work of a cocky, self-obsessed, self-indulgent genius. And it's all a long way from Guernica. Picasso had arrived in Paris at the turn of the century, a small, pugnacious, and frighteningly gifted Andalusian. In the city of the avant-garde, wherever you looked, all the rules of poetry, music, painting were being junked. Young Picasso, living like a bohemian, with his oil-slick hair, huge black eyes, and big rabbit's nose, he knew he had to be part of the giddy liberty. And he knew what he didn't want, the hoary old pantomimes of the mighty. Modern art was modern because it had turned its back on those grandstanding histories, painted for aristocrats and kings.
Here's power on a horse, the omnipotence of the ruler displayed by nonchalant control. Just one hand on the reins. The message was, if the sovereign can handle the great horse, he can certainly manage affairs of state, critical matters of war and peace. It was the most enduring image of pure power.
And here's what Picasso does. Instead of a prince in the saddle, a naked boy leading a bare-backed horse through an eerily empty primordial landscape. There's no hero to identify here, no story, no subject, just the modern coming straight out of the archaic, as if there had never been anything in between.
History down for the count then. Next up for obliteration, beauty, the classical ideal of art itself, made visible in the luscious form of the female nude.
And this is Picasso's ferocious attack on that sacred cow in 1907. This is how all those centuries of gazing at nudes and muttering demurely about graceful form end. A brothel line-up. They strip, you check them out. Everything ever associated with nude women in European art. Beauty, obliging sensuality, tenderness, all brutally sheared away.
And then, around 1910, having seen off beauty and history, Picasso goes for the hat trick. Something even more mind-blowing, something that for most people over the centuries have been the entire point of art. Bye-bye resemblance.
If a two-dimensional duplicate of the world is what you want, then photography is going to do that job much more efficiently. This is Picasso's art dealer, Ambroise Vollard. This is how Picasso saw him. A different vision of the way things really are. Cubism. Deep inside his slinky toy cascades of form, seen juddering through moments in time, was, he insisted, something compact, solid and firm. By blowing up the look of things, Picasso was saying, I'm getting beyond surface appearances to the core.
It wasn't for those who wanted something easy on the eye. But then Picasso wasn't interested in pleasuring the public. He positively reveled in the cult of difficulty. Too hard, you can almost hear him sneering, tough.
In the 1920s, there's something else he doesn't lose much sleep over. the state of the world. He's doing fine, thank you, but Europe is in deep trouble. Fascism beginning to strong-arm its way into power. But of the chaos and hatred, riot and revolution, there's not a hint in Picasso's work.
For some artists, it was no problem, an obligation even, to combine radical politics and radical painting, to have modern art criticize hypocrisy and injustice.
George Gross, the German artist, was busy having a go at the military dinosaurs and Nazi sympathizers who were busy subverting Germany's fragile democracy. Creatively, of course, Gross is no Picasso, but he never pretends that art can stay immune from ideology, high above the fray. He knows there's a war to be fought, and his brushes are armed to take the offensive.
The only wars Picasso had ever fought had been against the conventions of art. Oh yes, he'd mostly been on the side of freedom, but that had always been creative, not political freedom. No wonder one of his best friends called Picasso the least political person I've ever known.
What's happening in Picasso's studio is about as far from the barricades as you can get.
It's all very self-obsessed. Politics and social conflict doesn't interest him at all in the 1920s. Instead, he's brooding on his calling.
So, lots of complicated, super subtle images of the artist in the studio. Lots of reflections of and in mirrors. Lots of models pulled this way and that. Body parts artfully rearranged. He's also brooding on his increasingly tangled love life. On their harrowing beach vacations, Picasso and his wife, Olga, were in constant conflict. And when he was feeling imprisoned by the relationship, his artistic distortions are grotesque. Meet Praying Mantis Woman, with her frighteningly toothed all-purpose orifice.
Not all of his images of women were brutal and predatory. When he starts painting Marie-Thérèse, Picasso's jagged lines suddenly become as curvy and voluptuous as his lover's body.
We are deep in Picasso's world, where his principal inspirations are his art, his women, and himself. Picasso often said, "This is how modern art is supposed to be, free of sentimental attachments to place and memory." But even Pablo Picasso can't escape history.